in my screen? I don't see any of you, so.
Yep, we're good, Lisa.
Awesome, great. So the name of this presentation is Successfully Navigating the Financial Aid Web as a Transfer Student. And this is our agenda. So as I said, we have a lot of information to cover. So we'll go over Fafsa updates, which you should be doing with your Fafsa if you've already applied for financial aid, what your next steps are, what you should be doing at your current college as well as at CU Denver, how to manage your loans if you have loans, scholarships, including external and internal scholarships, awarding the College Opportunity Fund, how to make sure that you're getting your funding for that. And then if you're new to financial aid, then we'll go over that as well, just to make sure you're on the right track to getting started. So when updating the FAFSA, you need to first determine which year of FAFSA you need to update. So if you are currently in a spring term now, but planning to start at CU Denver in the summer of 2021, then you want to make sure that you're updating your 2020-21 FAFSA. So the FAFSA for the current year is the one that you would need to update. And basically the only thing you would need to go in and update would be adding our school code. And if your grade level have changed from sophomore to junior or freshman to sophomore, then you can update that status as well. That's an opportunity also for you to update your address or any personal information. But the important thing is adding our school code. Okay. Then if you're planning to start in fall of 21 and for aid in spring of 22 as well as summer of 22, then you will be completing a 2021-22 FAFSA application. So it's very important that when you go onto the FAFSA website that you're selecting the right year FAFSA, because if you select the wrong one, you won't be getting any of the financial aid that you're expecting. So, but if you're starting in the summer and then we'll continue on the fall, you do have to make sure that you complete both FAFSAs. And this is the school code that you would enter for CU Denver. So when you go onto the FAFSA, you'll go to the section where you list all the colleges that you wanted to receive your FAFSA information. If you already have 10 schools listed, because you can list up to 10 different schools, you will have to take one of those schools off in order to add CU Denver's school code. So next steps, so things that you need to do. So if you have aid at a prior school or your current school, and you're planning to start in the summer term or start in the fall, you need to make sure that the financial aid office at your current school is aware and provide them with a written statement to cancel your aid for the terms that you will not be attending. So if you're planning to attend CU Denver starting the summer, then make sure you indicate that you need your summer aid canceled. You cannot receive aid at 2 different schools at the same time. Otherwise, it will cause significant delays because now the schools are deciding on who should get the money because they've requested it. And so you won't be able to receive it at your new school until the old school has canceled it out. So that's why you don't want to delay in making sure that you cancel any aid that you have pending at another school. So for external scholarships, those may not be transferable from one school to the next. So you need to contact the donor and find out exactly how that scholarship works, or if it was a one-time scholarship, so it definitely will not follow you. If it is a transferable scholarship, then you want to contact the financial aid office to make them aware of the scholarship because they have to consider that with awarding your package. Because if you don't let them know that up front and they find out after the fact, then they may have to reevaluate your aid once they are aware that you have that scholarship coming in. But definitely make sure you contact the donor to see if you can transfer that scholarship from one school to the next and provide them with the contact information of the financial aid office for CU Denver. So, College Opportunity Fund. So, hopefully, you all have been taking advantage of the College Opportunity Fund if you are in a undergraduate student program. So, you can get up to 145 credits of tuition towards your undergraduate degree. The amount that you can receive for this academic year currently, and it may change in July because it changes every year, but because of COVID, the amount went down to $40 per credit hour. Okay? So if you are already receiving COF, you have to make sure that you authorize the COF on the CU Denver Access portal. That is how our registration office will know that you want to receive COF for CU Denver. And basically, how they will understand that is if you register for classes, then they will, when they are requesting the College Opportunity Fund for funds, they will send a list of all of our students that's registered to check against COF records. And if they have something for you, then they will send that information over to CU Denver. So to manage and authorize your College Opportunity Fund, you go to your student portal, click the Student Center tab, go to your student account, click COF Authorization Review, and Submit. And we highly recommend that you click the lifetime authorization so that it will automatically authorize for you every single semester instead of you having to do it. If you need more information, either contact the Registrar's Office for CU Denver, which is located on the 5th floor of the Student Commons building. And I've also provided a link directly linking you to the Registrar's Office, which has a lot of valuable information. If you've not applied for COF yet, this is the website of where you would want to go to the College Opportunity Fund College Assist website page. If you're an AdSet student, you could also apply for COF as well as an in-state resident. This is their contact information. And an example, so if you're taking 15 credit hours at $40 a credit, then that's $600 that will be subtracted from your tuition due. Only tuition, not tuition and fees, but it will be subtracted from your tuition. So if it's only 10 credit hours, then that's $400 that will be subtracted. And you're eligible for this every single semester that you are enrolled up to 145 credits. So when managing student loans, if you already have existing student loans, just like your other financial aid, you want to make sure that you contact the financial aid office at your existing school. If you have any disbursements that's pending disbursement after the spring term, if you're planning to enroll in the summer at CU, then make sure that they cancel those disbursements. Just like at your new school, well, your current school, if you receive student loans, you had to complete something called a MPN or the Master Promissory Note and complete an entrance counseling, which was like a little test to make sure that you understood what you were taking out was a loan and that it had to be repaid and what the lender's responsibilities are to you. So that MPN is called a serial note and it's good for 10 years unless you change schools. So when you go to a new school, you have to complete a new master promissory note and an entrance counseling. If your parents are interested in completing the Parent Plus loan to assist with your educational costs, if they have any pending plus loans at a prior school, they need to make sure that any future disbursements that's pending have been canceled. The Parent Plus loan requires that you complete a new application every year or every time that you're requesting funding. So they would need to do a new Parent Plus loan MPN and go through a new credit check and approval because the Parent Plus loan does require a credit approval. Make sure that you are completing in-school deferment forms, updating those. You want to make sure the lender knows that you're at a different school now. The Registrar Office is the record keeper of that information. They report your enrollment status to the National Clearinghouse, which is the federal database system that monitors all the student loans that you take out at a different school, whether you've graduated, whether you are full-time, you're half-time enrolled. If you have withdrawn, then all of that information is recorded through the National Clearinghouse. So you want to make sure that the Registrar's Office is completing the in-school deferment form for you, or you could go onto your lender's website. There should be the in-school deferment form that you can complete and submit as well. And basically what this form does is tells the Department of Education, who is your lender on the student loans, that you are still enrolled in school at least half time and to keep your loans in a deferred status so that you don't go into repayment while you're in school. Okay? So make sure you contact your loan servicer, and that's the person that's managing the student loans on your behalf for the U.S. Department of Education. Cancel any pending disbursements. And if you ever have any loans on your account that you just want to pay off, there's never, ever a prepayment penalty to pay off any of your federal student loans, whether it's while you're in school or once you're in a repayment status. So as it relates to interest rates, the interest rate for federal student loans change every year. So every July 1st, based on the Treasury bill or the T-bill, the interest rates for federal student loans are determined. So we usually find out about it in June or so. Currently, for the student direct student loan, for undergraduate student, the interest rate is 2.75%. Right now, no interest is accruing because of COVID-19, so everyone's interest rate is basically zero. If you're a graduate or professional student, you're only eligible for the unsubsidized portion of the direct loan, and the interest rate on that is 4.35%. And these rates are good until June 30th. For the Parent Plus loan, the current interest rate is 5.30%, which are still very good interest rates. On the direct student loan, the interest rate will never, ever be higher than 8.25%. That's the federal mandated interest rate. On the Parent Plus loan, the interest rate will never be higher than 9%, regardless of what's going on in the economy. But again, the new interest rate will be determined as of July 1st, and the interest rates are fixed for that academic year. So changes due to COVID. So all current loans that are in repayment are now deferred. So there's no payments that's been expected from it for anyone. And the interest rate is also 0% until October 1st of 2021. President Biden, as you guys have probably heard in the news, has been talking about forgiving loan amounts either from $10,000 up to $50,000. So we're still waiting to hear what the determination is going to be on that. So for any new loans that you're taking out, moving forward, how that's going to, what's going to happen with that or how that's going to be managed, I'm not sure. So we have to just sort of stay tuned to all the changes that's going on as a result to the COVID-19 pandemic. Very important website to be familiar with, the National Student Loan Database System. This is that national clearinghouse where the Registrar's Office reports your enrollment status. So whether you're full-time, half-time, whether you graduated, whether you've withdrawn, they record that date to the National Clearinghouse. That date determines whether you go into repayment or not. So all of that information is recorded on this website. Also recorded on this website is where every federal aid that you receive is tracked. Aggregate limits, so some fundings like the Pell Grant and the student loans have an aggregate lifetime limit that you can't receive over a particular amount. That is recorded on this website. Every loan that you've taken out, what year you took it out, what the interest rate were, how much interest is accruing, who do you make your payments to? If you're making payments, it's recorded there. It will tell whether it's going towards interest or the principal amount of your loan. Everything you need to know about your loans is on this website. Also with the Pell Grant, you can only receive up to 600% of full-time Pell Grant awarding. So that's basically 6 years of full-time Pell. That percentage is tracked on this website as well. Okay, and the website is listed here. So I highly encourage you to go into that website, look at your account, look at how much loans you've already taken out if you have some, look at your Pell Grant percentages. And especially if you're considering taking out new loans, you want to make sure that if you're taking out a loan, you absolutely need that funding. If you don't need it, do not take it out. If you need some and the school has awarded you $6,000, but you only need $3,000, just take $3,000. But typically you do have to accept the full amount of the award. Once you accept it, then it will allow you to go in and adjust the amounts that you will actually want to receive. But be mindful that whatever amount you accept is going to be split in half. So if you are wanting $3,000 for the fall and spring term combined, you will only receive $1,500 in the fall. The other $1,500 will not post to your account into the spring. So if you're needing that full $3,000 for the fall term, then you need to take that into consideration. So the Registrar's Office, again, will update your enrollment history every 60 days with the National Clearinghouse. So it's very important that you make sure that your enrollment status is updated. Confirm it with your lender. The schools are supposed to do it every 60 days, but sometimes that gets behind. So you want to make sure that you're listed as in school so that you don't go into repayment prematurely on your student loans. So you want to review your loan balances annually, and each time you're considering taking out an additional loan. And you can also, there's a link here in this presentation that I can share out to everyone where you can go directly to those pages to check your aggregate limits. So with awarding federal student loans and grants, so with the federal grants, which is basically the Pell Grant, the SELG grant, if you're entitled to that, that goes out to the various neediest of students. So basically, if you have a 0 EFC, and if the school has any of that funding left over as far as the SELG grant, then they will award that. Pell Grant is entitled money. As long as your EFC is within the Pell Grant eligibility criteria and you're enrolled at least half time, then you will be awarded the Pell Grant. Now, if you've used all your Pell Grant awarding that was allocated for the fall and the spring, then there won't be any of that left over for the summer. But fortunately, there's something called the year-round Pell that the Department of Education has implemented a few years ago to encourage students to take classes in the summer to complete their degree early. So there could be an additional half of your Pell Grant award that you can get for the summer term as well. For institutional grants, so most will require that you complete the FAFSA or the CASFA application, and we'll talk about that a little later, in order to be considered for that funding, because the CASFA and the FAFSA application helps them determine what your need is, and that helps them to determine how much of that grant money that can be awarded to you. Grants money will not follow you from school to school. That's based on the college that you're attending. CU Denver has an allocation of funding that we can award out, and that's what we use to award CU Denver students. Summer aid could be very limited. You may only have loans available in the summer, especially if you're planning on doing a study abroad program or something like that. So it would be important for you, if you know you're going to take a summer program and the funding is going to be limited in summer, you may have to, budget and try to save some of your spring money to help support that. So work study, you need to request that on the FAFSA application. If you do not, and it's not awarded to you automatically, then you can request it from the financial aid office. Chances are you will be put on a waiting list. And then as students decline their work study or they don't work in the financial aid office after a certain time, we'll go in and cancel those awards. It will be added back to the pot, and then they will start to award off of the waiting list. So when you're updating your FAFSA, if you're interested in receiving federal work study while you're at CU Denver, then make sure you update that section on your FAFSA that you're interested in receiving work study, so you could be considered for that automatically. And then we do have employment services on campus. If you go to the financial aid website or the Career Center website, look for the Handshakes website, and that will provide you with a list of jobs that are available. Okay. For student loans, typically the federal student loans are allocated per academic year. An academic year is a fall, spring, and summer term, typically starting with the fall term. When you receive your awards, then your loans are awarded for the fall and spring only in most cases. For CU Denver, that's what we will do. And they will award out the full allocation. So if you use the full allocation of your federal loans for the fall and spring term, you won't have anything left over that could be awarded for the summer term. But if you don't utilize the loans in the fall and the spring or one semester or the other, then that funding for that academic year could be used to support summer loans if you're planning to go to summer school. Summer is technically like a separate application for funding. And you don't have to submit a separate application per se, but if you enroll for the summer courses, then the financial aid office will assume that you have a Fafsa on file that you're interested in receiving financial aid, and they will award you accordingly. There could be some institutional aid left over. We try to save some of our institutional aid to be available for summer school. And if you've exhausted all of your funds and there's no institutional grants or scholarships that's available for the summer, then you may have to have your parents utilize the Parent Plus loan, or you may have to apply for a private or alternative student loan, which is directly through a bank. It's in the student's name, so then therefore the student would have to pass a credit check. And it may require that the student have a cosigner. And this is primarily for a summer term. Scholarships, our scholarship application opens up every year, October 1st, and the deadline is March 1st, so it's coming up. So if you have not applied for scholarships yet, here's the link. You want to do so as soon as possible. There may not be very many scholarships available in the summer term, but definitely check with the financial aid office regarding that. And throughout the year, we're always getting scholarship opportunities. Donors are providing information and scholarships through trust and things like that. So make sure you're monitoring your CU Denver email, because if we get that funding and that scholarship becomes available, the financial aid office will send out an email blast to everyone saying, hey, we got this scholarship funding. Make sure you go out and apply and see if you're eligible to receive it. So the year-round Pell Grant, like I say, this is primarily available for students if you're planning on going to summer school. So what it does, the federal government has now approved year-round Pell to allow students to receive up to, instead of 100% of Pell Grant in an awarding year, up to 150%. So you get an additional half of your Pell Award. So if your Pell Award was for the academic year was $5,000, you're going to get an additional $2,500 for $7,500 total. And that $2,500 is what you would be able to use towards your cost in the summer term. But if your budget in the summer term is only $2,000, then they're only going to award $2,000. You can never receive more aid than what your cost of attendance is for any particular academic year or semester. That's part of the cost of attendance or the school's budget. So the benefit of the year round, it allows students to take classes in the summer, and so that you could finish your degree and graduate sooner. That's the primary focus for that. So with the scholarship through CU Denver, so many of the scholarships don't require U.S. citizenship, so it is open to asset students. If you are a Colorado resident, so you would make sure that you go to the financial aid page or go directly to the Scholar Link tab to apply for those scholarships. Again, the deadline is March 1st. For transfer students that are coming from a community college, there are some very specific scholarships that are available for you to apply for and be considered for, and they're very good scholarships. So the Reisher Scholarship, as well as the Phi Theta Kappa Scholarship. So I just want to make sure that you are aware of those type of scholarships, and they are available to you on the financial aid website. So make sure that you take advantage of that. Enrollment status. So aid is based on your enrollment status. It's something you may already be aware of, but just want to make sure. So as a full-time student for CU Denver, that would be 12 credits or more. To be a 3/4 time student, that's between 9 and 11 credits. Half-time student is between 6 and 8 credits. You're less than half-time if your 5 credits are below. For Pell Grant, in some cases, if you're less than 5 credits or less, you can have some Pell Grant eligibility, but it's very, very minimal. So, and Pell Grant, again, is based on your enrollment status as well as your expected family contribution as determined by the Fafsa application. Okay? So those two tie in together. So if you only have time and you were awarded a full-time Pell Grant of $6,000, you're only going to receive $3,000 because you can only receive half of what your eligibility is as a half-time student. Okay? So if you're new to financial aid, you want to make sure that you complete the FAFSA application if you are a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. If you are not a U.S. citizen, asset, or DACA student, then you would have to complete the CASFA. And I have the website available for both of those opportunities. You cannot apply for both. You have to do FAFSA or the CASFA. So if you're eligible for the FAFSA, meaning that you're a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, and then you would want to make sure that you complete the FAFSA, the Federal Student Aid application. Otherwise, you would complete the CASFA so that you can be considered for state and institutional funding. And this is a process that you would do every October 1st for the next academic year. So once you submit the FAFSA application, within 3 to 5 business days, if you submit the application electronically, your FAFSA results will be sent to you via email, and you'll receive something called a Student Aid Report, or a SAR. Okay? If you are not able to submit the FAFSA or the CASFA electronically, and you have to submit the signature page, and usually that's in the case if you don't have a Social Security number, then you won't be able to submit the application electronically. So you'd have to print the signature page and mail that in to FAFSA or to CASFA, depending on the one that you complete. The difference between the two is the processing time. If you do it electronically, which we highly recommend if you can, it only takes 3 to 5 days for it to process and to be sent to the college that you're attending. If you submit the paper signature, it could take up to 4 to 6 weeks for us to receive that information. So it could be very timely. So the student aid report also indicates what your expected contribution is, or your EFC. And that's what the financial aid office will use to help determine how needy a student is and the type of aid that could be awarded to that student. The student aid report also indicates if you've been selected for a process called verification. And I'll go into a little more detail about what verification is. If you're looking at on your student aid report next to your EFC and there's an asterisk by your EFC number here, that means that you've been selected for verification. Excuse me. And then also there could be something called a flag, or your FAFSA or CASFA could be rejected due to discrepant information as something that's called a C code. So there will be a C next to your EFC if you have a flag on your account. And basically that's a different form of verification. So once your FAFSA is submitted to the processing center, or your CASFA is submitted, then those processors will randomly select who is selected for verification. It's a random selection of about 30% of our student population, so we don't know who's going to be selected. If you are selected for verification, or if you have a flag or a C code for discrepant information, the financial aid office is going to send your communication typically through your to-do list on the student portal, or they may send you an email to your student email account. So it's very important that you're monitoring both of those on a regular basis, at least once a week until you have your award, or even after your award, because if there is any additional scholarship or funding or anything needed, then that's how they will communicate typically with you. So with verification, the federal student aid program mandates that the financial aid office request additional information to be reviewed. And it's basically to verify that the information that you have put on the FAFSA is true and accurate. And if it is not, then the financial aid office has to use that information that you provided to verify your file, update your FAFSA, send the information back to the federal processor, wait for those results to come back, and then you can be awarded. You cannot be awarded if you are selected for verification until verification has been completed, or if a C code has been cleared. An example of a C code could be, or a discrepant is if you're missing a parent signature on the FAFSA, or they couldn't confirm your citizenship status, or if you're a male and you were registered for selective service, but they don't see your registration information. So all males do have to register for selective service between the ages of 18 and 25 to be eligible for federal student aid. And that's all males that are born male. And if they are finding any FAFSA information or student aid reports that look like there's some fraudulent activity or something's been misreported, then they are obligated to report that to the Office of the Inspector General for the Federal Student Aid Program. So make sure that whatever information that you are providing is accurate and true information. So this is a sample of what the student aid report looks like. You see here is your EFC. There's an asterisk. So this person has been selected for verification. And also in the body of the letter, it will tell you if you've been selected for verification. If there was a C code or discrepant information, it will say we weren't able to confirm this. Please provide verification information to the financial aid office. So once you submit the FAFSA or the CASFA, all communication is with the financial aid office, not FAFSA or the CASFA administrators. Okay? One other thing I want to point out here is that if you're contacting the school and say, I've had my FAFSA submitted, but they're saying they don't have it, this DRN number here, you can provide that to the financial aid office. They can input that information and draw in your FAFSA. It's sort of like your FAFSA identifier. But generally, the best thing to do is go in and add the school code so that the school will automatically receive your FAFSA data. So we talked a little bit already about the rejection code or the C code. So with any type of conflict or discrepancy on your FAFSA, that information has to be, or that discrepancy has to be cleared up before your file could be awarded. You don't have to even be selected for verification to have a C code. You can have a C code without verification. So whatever information has been requested, make sure that you get it to the financial aid office as soon as possible. Any delay in providing that information means that your file is just sitting there waiting on that verification documentation. So no awarding is happening. No aid will be dispersed to your account until that has been cleared, reconfirmed with the FAFSA processor, and your file has been awarded. So forms of types of documentation that may be required as far as legal documentation that's acceptable for the financial aid office. I have a list here. Also for verification, the financial aid office may need to verify your tax information, your household information, if you have other siblings that's in college, if there's child support paid or received. There's various different areas that they may have to confirm that the information is correct. The financial aid website will have some of those forms available for you online on the financial aid page that you can complete online and automatically submit to the financial aid office, or that you can download, print, and then upload them, scan them in and upload it and send them directly to the financial aid office. One form that's very tricky for students and parents is if you have to verify your household information. That form is sort of a two-part form as a dependent student, meaning that parent information is required on the FAFSA. So the student would generate and complete the form. Once they submit it, then the parent will automatically receive an email saying, hey, we need you to complete this information. then the parent would sign it and submit it. Until both have completed that process, that documentation or request for verification will be considered incomplete until both are done. So when you look at your to-do list and there's things that are missing, it's going to be an initiated status. That lets you know that something is needed if it's in an initiated status. It's complete once it says received or completed, but even if it says received and it doesn't have a complete yet, you need to make sure you continue to monitor that, because it won't be considered complete until the financial aid office has had opportunity to review it, make sure that it's correct. There's no blank spot. So if it's 0, then put 0. If it's NA, it don't apply to you, put NA. Don't leave any sections blank on any of those documentation, or it will be considered incomplete. And then they will reach out to you again to provide that documentation. Tax returns, the biggest issue with those is that people, when they submit those tax returns, they do not sign them. And a missing signature on a tax document that's been submitted to the financial aid office is considered incomplete. So you want to make sure that you're signing and dating everything that you submit to the financial aid office to alleviate any delays. So if you need tax returns, this is some information of how you can request tax returns if you don't have a copy, or if they're requesting a tax transcript. Then this is where you can go to request a tax transcript. So documents received by the financial aid office must also be acceptable, mean legible, have all signatures before any awarding of an official award can be granted to you. You may receive an estimated award based off of the submission of your FAFSA, but if you're selected for verification, then it's possible that you won't receive your official award notice until verification is complete. An estimated award letter basically just gives you an idea of what your aid could be. But if you're selected for verification, that has to be reviewed and completed first. If they find any discrepancy on the information that you initially provided on your FAFSA, again, they would have to resubmit that to FAFSA, re-award you, so your aid could change. It could go up, it could go down based on what the discrepancy was. So it's very important that you try to provide the most accurate information with your initial application. If you don't have your tax information, which you should have, because the information that's requested on the 2021-22 FAFSA is for 2019 information. So that tax information should already be complete. But if you don't have it, you can put in estimated award information and to submit your FAFSA, but you will have to later go in and update that information with the appropriate tax information. So be aware that if you're going in and you're changing numbers or things on your FAFSA, all those transactions are being recorded, and the financial aid office is aware. So, and it also flags the federal processor, because it makes think that there's some fraudulent activity going on because there's been so many transactions submitted. But if something is wrong on your FAFSA and you do have to go in and update it or correct it, you will go back in as a return user and correct whatever the information is. You have to also submit signature pages or use the FSA ID username and password to sign each time you make an update. It will require a signature. Okay. A lot of students get held up because they just submit it without the signatures, thinking it's already signed. But anytime you make an update, it requires a new signature or a signature page. So this is a sample of the student aid report. And up here, you see this person has submitted 3 transactions. So this is where the financial aid office is seeing the number of transactions that has been made. And if the financial aid office is going in and making updates on your FAFSA, then that number will also update your transactions as well. So for new folks, if you're using the FAFSA and to request your tax information, you want to use the data retrieval tool that's tied into the FAFSA. It allows you to access your tax information directly from the IRS, and it loads your tax information onto the FAFSA for you so that you're not having to figure out what number goes on which line. It expedites the process of FAFSA. If you selected for verification and they're requiring tax transcripts information, using the data retrieval tool will alleviate that need for do that. You will need your FSA ID, username and password, and a copy of your federal tax return in order to access that database system through the IRS. And make sure that the information that you are putting on the DRT request section, it will have some pre-filled information. Make sure that information is correct and make sure it matches exactly the way it is on your tax return. So for example, if your name is Michael J. Smith and on your Michael James Smith, but on your tax return, it just says J, but on the data retrieval tool, it's saying Michael James, you have to change it to J. Make sure it matches exactly what's on your tax return because it's trying to match up your tax return in the IRS database. So they're making sure that they're pulling in the right data. Okay, so make sure that matches exactly. The address also, if your address is 123 South Street and on your tax return it just has an S, but you put in the word South, it's not going to match. It has to match exactly. Don't put in dashes, commas, periods, or anything like that. Then once that information is submitted, and if they find it, then it'll say, hey, we found it. Do you want us to transmit it? Yes, you do. So you'll click a little box, and then right next to that box, it'll say transfer data now. You want to click that button. If you're not able to use the data retrieval tool, then you would just have to manually input the information on the FAFSA yourself. Just make sure that you're following all the instructions on the FAFSA because it will tell you exactly what number is on the tax return that you need to put on the FAFSA. There may be areas where it's asking for schedules from the tax return. You may not have that particular schedule. So if it's not attached with your tax return, then don't worry about it. You don't have that schedule. So don't get hung up on that. So if you don't have a schedule, and I think the schedules go up to 6, so it's 1 through 6. You may not have any of those, so that's fine. So just answer the question accordingly. And this is what, using a data retrieval tool, it will say link to the IRS. Then it'll ask you if you want to proceed to the site. You want to say yes and click OK. And then this is the page that will automatically populate where you would put in your information. Okay, your information will be pre-populated. So you just want to make sure that it's accurate. And then if it's successful, it will tell you that it's successfully transmitted. Then the areas that it took the information from the tax return on your FAFSA, it will say that this information was transferred for the IRS. So you don't have to address those. There may still be some income questions that you may still have to answer, but it will be very minimal. So last thing, prior year or PPY. So you're probably wondering, if I'm starting school in fall of 2021, why do you need my tax returns from 2019? They changed that a few years ago to benefit the student because typically at this time we would be just filing tax returns for 2020, and that's the tax return that normally we would be asking for. But students were missing out on scholarship and grant opportunities because parents weren't able to get their taxes done in time or before those scholarship deadlines, and a lot of the scholarship donors were requesting copies of the student aid report. So therefore, they changed it for a 2-year prior tax return. So all the tax returns should be done. There should not be any delays and anyone being able to complete their FAFSA. So therefore, they won't miss out on scholarship or grant opportunities. So again, we'll need the 2019 tax return. And even if your circumstances, your household or your financial circumstances have changed since 2019, you still have to put that information as required on the FAFSA, complete verification if you've been selected for verification, get your initial official award letter. If the aid is not sufficient, then that's when you would want to reach out to the financial aid office to submit an appeal for an income adjustment or a household adjustment. And those appeal forms are available on the financial aid website. So if you're having some kind of difficulty and you need additional funding, reach out to the financial aid office to submit an appeal. You basically have to explain what the circumstances is, provide any supporting documentation, and they can make those adjustments. So if there's a death of one parent and both parent information is on the FAFSA, they can go in and take off one parent's income information, reevaluate your file, and reaward you to try to get you additional funding. So don't feel like you can't go to school, make sure that any adjustments you want to reach out to the financial aid office. So these are just some quick tips. So only provide the information that's requested. Providing information to the financial aid office that they are not asking for creates a discrepancy if something is wrong on that form or it doesn't match what's on your FAFSA. That creates delays with processing your file. Monitor your student email and your portal, and remove schools will no longer receive your student aid data. So make sure you narrow down all your choices. Make sure CU Denver is one of the schools that's listed. So that will allow us to provide you out with estimated or official award notices. So that's all I have. This is my contact information. If you have additional questions, or you could email me if you'd like a copy of the presentation. I believe that we are recording the presentation also, so it may be available, I believe, on YouTube later on. So I'm going to stop sharing and see if there are any